Most people think wars happen because of ideology, politics, or sheer chance. But what if the real driver was debt? After World War I, Germany was drowning in reparations it could never realistically pay. The Treaty of Versailles wasn't just a punishment, it was a carefully designed financial trap. Germany had to borrow money from American banks to pay Britain and France, who would then use that money to pay their own debts to the United States. On paper, it made sense. In reality, it created a ticking time bomb. By the 1920s, Germany's economy was teetering, inflation soared, unemployment rose, and ordinary citizens were struggling to survive. Yet, American banks continued lending, making sure that Germany stayed afloat just enough to continue paying and to keep the whole debt machine running. Every loan, every payment, every economic fluctuation was part of a calculated system designed to extract wealth across borders. Think about it. Why do we see financial crises repeating throughout history? 1929, 2008. The patterns are there if you know where to look. And the debt left unpaid from World War I didn't just disappear. It set the stage for another conflict, one that would be even more devastating. So here's the question. If wars can be traced back to financial manipulations and nations are forced into conflicts because of money, what does that say about the way history really unfolds? And more importantly, how did this invisible hand guide Germany and eventually the world toward World War II?
To really understand how World War II was triggered, we need to zoom in on the financial machinery behind the scenes. Germany wasn't just a country struggling after a war. It was a carefully managed experiment in debt control. Here's how it worked. American banks lent Germany massive sums of money in the 1920s, but these weren't ordinary loans. They came with strings attached. Financial advisors oversaw how Germany spent every mark. The Reichsbank, Germany's central bank, was partially controlled by foreign interests. Railways, industrial assets, and even customs revenues were pledged as collateral. Every tax collected, every business profit, a portion was siphoned directly to international creditors before it could help ordinary Germans. Imagine that for a second. Citizens working long hours paying taxes, but much of that money never stayed in the country. It flowed through a circular system, bouncing from Germany to France and Britain, then back to American banks, growing with interest at every step. And here's the kicker. As long as loans kept flowing, the system looked stable. Stop the loans, and everything collapses. That's exactly what happened in 1929. But this wasn't accidental. The system was designed to create dependency, vulnerability, and ultimately, control. And that's when the stage was set for someone like Hitler to rise, someone who could restore order and keep the debt machine running. It's like a chess game where the pieces aren't soldiers, they're dollars. And every move, every crisis, every political upheaval was orchestrated to keep the money moving in the right direction. Now that we understand the financial machinery, let's trace how it actually shaped history. Picture Germany in the 1920s, a nation crippled by reparations, dependent on foreign loans, teetering on the edge of collapse. Every economic hiccup had ripple effects across Europe and America.
Take the Dawes Plan of 1924. American banks injected 800 million gold marks into Germany. Suddenly, factories hummed, railways ran, and Germany appeared to recover. But this recovery wasn't organic, it was controlled. Germany's economy was on a leash, and the leash was held by bankers thousands of miles away in New York. Fast forward a few years. The Young Plan of 1929 extended reparations for decades, making it mathematically impossible for Germany to be free of debt. Even before the Depression hit, Germany's children were born into a lifetime of financial obligation. Then came 1929. The American stock market crashed, loans stopped flowing, and the circular debt system collapsed. German banks failed, unemployment skyrocketed from 1.3 million to over 6 million, and industrial production plummeted. Citizens were desperate. The government was weak, the economy was paralyzed, and chaos was brewing. And here's the critical point. In this chaos, financial interests didn't just stand by. They funded political movements. Industrialists poured money into parties promising order, and the stage was set for Hitler to rise. This wasn't just politics. It was the financial system manipulating events to protect its own interests. Every historical event, from the Dawes Plan to the Depression, wasn't just about economics. It was a series of steps engineered to maintain control over Germany's debt and ensure repayment. History was being written not just by leaders, but by bankers pulling strings behind the curtain. Now, let's bring this pattern into the modern era. The debt games that shaped Germany almost a century ago didn't vanish. They evolved. Look around today. National debt soaring, central banks manipulating interest rates, corporations surviving only because someone keeps the money flowing. It's a web of financial dependency that most people never see. Think about it. Governments inject trillions to prop up failing banks, bail out corporations, and stabilize markets. Ordinary citizens? Their wages barely keep up with inflation, their savings lose value, and yet the financial elite keep growing richer. Sound familiar? It should. It's history repeating itself. The key lesson here is that crises are postponed, not prevented. When 2008 hit, bailouts and stimulus packages delayed the inevitable, but the underlying debts didn't disappear. Just like Germany in the 1920s, modern economies are running on borrowed time. The system survives as long as the money keeps flowing to the right hands.
Every policy, every intervention, every market maneuver today echoes the past. The same institutions that benefited from past wars and crises are still operating, still finding ways to profit from economic instability. And just like then, the danger isn't visible until it's too late. So the question becomes, how long can this continue before the next domino falls? Before the invisible debt chains snap, triggering chaos that affects everyone, not just bankers and corporations? History offers a chilling answer, sooner than most think. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter, the hidden mechanism driving it all. Just like in Germany, crises today aren't random accidents. They're the result of cycles, of debts piling up, of financial structures designed to benefit a few while masking risk from the many. Think about 2008. The crash wasn't a surprise. It was mathematically inevitable if you understood the leverage, the derivatives, the ballooning debt. And yet, most people were blind to it. Governments poured trillions into the system to prevent collapse. But here's the thing. Every intervention only delayed the reckoning. It didn't remove it. Now, picture this. Multiple cycles converging at once. Long-term debt cycles, financial bubbles, global credit dependencies, all aligning to create maximum stress. This is the point where history says a systemic reset becomes almost unavoidable. And experts now point to 2026 as a potential peak of this stress. That's not speculation, it's pattern recognition based on centuries of financial repetition. The critical insight? Crises aren't just economic, they're engineered opportunities for those who control capital. When debt becomes unsustainable, intervention is designed to protect the creditors, not the public. And just like with Germany before World War II, strong nations, weak nations, corporations, even entire industries are all part of this interconnected system. If one piece collapses, the chain reaction can be catastrophic. Ask yourself, what are the warning signals you're ignoring today? Yield curve inversions, corporate debt surges, government borrowing. It's all flashing red. The past shows us exactly what follows, and it isn't pretty.
Let's ground this in concrete examples, because seeing the patterns makes the danger impossible to ignore. Take the yield curve inversion. Historically, every U.S. recession in the past 70 years was preceded by this signal. It's like the financial system waving a bright red flag, saying, "Trouble ahead."
Look at debt levels too. Household debt, corporate debt,
Even commercial real estate exposure has been climbing to historic highs. The numbers are staggering. Companies that survived the last crash on cheap money are now fragile, carrying mountains of debt they can barely service. Consider what happened in 1929 Germany. When American loans stopped flowing, the entire system collapsed. Today, global finance is far more interconnected. One domino falls and the rest follow faster than anyone expects. And here's a shocking fact. Even now, some institutions are so big that their failure could trigger a worldwide credit freeze. The system that's supposed to protect us is the very system that could devastate us. History doesn't lie. Every major crash was foreshadowed by warning signals that, if understood, could have saved billions and even lives. The question is, are you paying attention, or are you waiting for the crisis to hit before noticing? Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Everything seems to be inflated at the same time. Stocks, bonds, crypto, real estate. It's what experts call an everything bubble. And when every market is a bubble, the risk isn't just high, it's systemic. One shock and the consequences ripple across every sector. Rising interest rates are like pulling the plug on a bathtub full of debt. Companies that survive thanks to cheap money, the so-called zombie companies, suddenly find themselves unable to pay even the interest, let alone grow. Their collapse doesn't happen in isolation. It spreads like wildfire through the financial system. Look at how markets are connected. A crash in real estate affects banks. Banks affect corporations. Corporations affect employment, which affects consumption, which circles back to markets. It's a domino effect, but each domino is larger than the last. And here's the kicker. No one is immune. The same patterns we saw in 1929 in Germany and during other crises are repeating globally. The interconnectedness of today's financial world makes the eventual fallout faster, bigger, and more unpredictable. So if these trends continue unchecked, what happens next? How close are we to the point where the system itself becomes unstable? The answer lies in understanding what triggers the initial crack, and that's exactly what we'll explore next. So, what could happen if these trends continue unchecked? Let's break it down. First comes the crack, the initial failure. It could be a bank, a major corporation, or even a sovereign state defaulting on its debt. This isn't speculation. History has shown us how one collapse can spark a chain reaction.
Next comes contagion. When one part of the system fails, the effects ripple outward. Credit freezes, markets panic, and companies that seemed stable suddenly find themselves teetering on the edge. The dominoes start falling faster than anyone can respond. Governments and central banks will inevitably step in with intervention. Stimulus packages, interest rate cuts, bailouts. These measures can provide short-term relief, but they also create moral hazard, delaying the inevitable and often making the final fallout even worse. Finally, we reach the secondary collapse. This is where the broader economic and social consequences become unavoidable. Mass unemployment, business closures, social unrest, and geopolitical tensions. Every crisis has its human and political toll, and this one would be no different. The key point here is that history isn't random. The patterns are predictable. Just like in 1929, 2008, and even going back to the post-World War cycles, the warning signs are all around us. The more you understand these signals, the better you can position yourself before the system reaches its breaking point. Now that we understand how a major collapse could unfold, the next question is obvious. What can individuals do to prepare? First, reduce exposure to risky assets. That doesn't mean abandoning the market entirely, but be selective. Avoid over-leveraged companies, speculative investments, and bubbles waiting to burst. Second, build cash reserves and pay down debt. Having liquidity isn't just about safety, it's about flexibility. In a crisis, cash becomes power, the ability to act when others are forced to panic sell. Diversification is key. Look for assets that hold value during instability. Gold, silver, farmland, essential services, or even companies with consistent cash flow. These aren't flashy investments, but they're reliable anchors when markets swing wildly. Psychological preparation is just as important. Crises trigger fear and irrational decisions. Staying calm and sticking to a plan can be the difference between surviving and losing everything. Imagine everyone around you panicking while you calmly adjust your positions. Opportunity often comes from chaos. The main takeaway? It's not about perfect timing. It's about positioning wisely. Those who anticipate and prepare can not only protect their wealth, but potentially capitalize on the upheaval that will overwhelm the unprepared. Let's take a step back and see the full picture. Hidden economic cycles, debt crises, and systemic financial patterns have predicted every major collapse for over a century. From the aftermath of World War I through the Great Depression to 2008, the same underlying mechanisms repeated: debts, bailouts, and concentrated financial control. Now, all signs point to 2026 as peak year of systemic stress. This isn't speculation, it's history giving us a roadmap. The choice is yours. Will you wait and get caught off guard? Or will you prepare now, position wisely, and protect what matters? Take action. Reduce risk, diversify, stay informed, and think strategically. Knowledge alone isn't power. Applied knowledge is what creates resilience and opportunity. If this video opened your eyes, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and share these insights with others. The more people who understand these hidden patterns, the better prepared we all are for what's coming. Remember, every crisis has winners and losers. The difference lies in preparation.